The morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains of the hospital room, casting soft shadows across Kate's pale face. She had been sitting in the same chair for 3 days now, watching her younger sister Camilla sleep fitfully in the narrow bed. The rhythmic beeping of machines had become the soundtrack to her vigil, punctuated only by the occasional shuffle of nurses in the hallway. Kate's fingers trembled as she reached for the cup of cold coffee on the bedside table. The liquid had lost its warmth hours ago, much like the hope that had been slowly draining from her heart. Camilla stirred, her eyelids fluttering open to reveal the same bright green eyes that had once sparkled with mischief during their childhood adventures. "Kate!" Camilla's voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from medications and the breathing tube that had been removed just yesterday. "You're still here." A smile tugged at the corners of Kate's mouth, the first genuine one in days. "Where else would I be? You know I've never been good at leaving you alone. Remember when you got stuck in that oak tree behind our house when we were kids?" Camilla's lips curved slightly, a ghost of her former radiant smile. "You climbed up after me, even though you were terrified of heights. Mom was so angry when she found us both crying in the branches." "She was more relieved than angry," Kate corrected gently, adjusting the thin blanket around her sister's shoulders. "Just like she'll be when she gets back from signing those papers with the lawyers." The mention of their mother brought a shadow across Camilla's face. Kate immediately regretted bringing up the subject of the estate planning, the wills, and all the legal preparations that had become necessary since the diagnosis. Camilla had always been the free spirit of the family, the one who painted watercolors in the garden and collected vintage books from estate sales. The thought of mortality and final wishes seemed to weigh heavily on someone who had always lived so fully in the present moment. "The doctors came by again this morning," Camilla said quietly, her gaze fixed on the window where autumn leaves were beginning to fall from the maple tree outside. "Dr. Richardson wants to discuss treatment options." Kate felt her chest tighten. They had been through this conversation multiple times over the past week. The treatments were becoming more aggressive, the side effects more severe, and the prognosis remained stubbornly uncertain. Each doctor's visit brought new terminology that Kate had never wanted to learn: metastasis, palliative care, quality of life assessments. "What did you tell him?" Kate asked, though she could already read the answer in her sister's expression. "I told him I needed more time to think." Camilla turned her head to look directly at Kate, and the intensity in her eyes was startling. "But I keep wondering if thinking is just another word for avoiding the inevitable." Kate leaned forward in her chair, closing the distance between them. "Hey, don't talk like that. You've beaten every challenge that's ever come your way. Remember when you decided to learn French in 3 months just because you fell in love with that Parisian cookbook? Or when you taught yourself to play guitar because you heard that song at the coffee shop? This is different, Kate." Camilla's voice carried a weight that made Kate's stomach clench with worry. "This isn't something I can will myself through with enough determination and late-night practice sessions." The room fell into a comfortable silence, broken only by the distant sounds of the hospital continuing its daily rhythm around them. Kate watched her sister's face, noting how the illness had sharpened her cheekbones and made her eyes appear larger, more luminous. Even in sickness, Camilla possessed an ethereal beauty that had always made Kate feel protective of her younger sister. "Do you remember the summer we spent at Aunt Helen's lake house?" Camilla asked suddenly, her voice taking on a dreamy quality. "You were 16, and I was 14. We spent every morning on that old wooden dock, dangling our feet in the water and making up stories about the fish we could see swimming below." Kate smiled at the memory. "You insisted that the large base near the dock pilings was actually an enchanted prince who had been cursed by a jealous sea witch. You named him Frederick and brought him breadcrumbs every day. And you told me I was being ridiculous, but you still helped me sneak food from the kitchen." Camilla's laugh was weak, but genuine. "You've always been my accomplice in the impossible things, Kate, even when you thought they were foolish." The words hung between them, carrying implications that Kate wasn't ready to face. She had indeed been Camilla's partner in countless adventures, her supporter through art school when their parents had worried about practical career prospects, her cheerleader through a series of romantic relationships that never quite worked out. Kate had always been the steady one, the planner, the sister who kept detailed calendars and emergency contact lists. Camilla had been the dreamer, the artist, the one who believed in magic and possibility. "The lake house is still there," Kate said carefully. "Aunt Helen mentioned that we're welcome to visit whenever we want. Maybe when you're feeling stronger, we could go back. Spend some time on the dock again." Camilla's smile faltered slightly. "Kate, we need to talk about realistic things now. Not just the beautiful dreams we used to share." Before Kate could respond, their mother appeared in the doorway, her arms full of legal documents and her face etched with the stress of the morning's appointments. Margaret Williams had aged visibly over the past month, her usually pristine appearance showing signs of the strain they were all experiencing. "How are my girls?" she asked, setting down the papers and moving immediately to kiss Camilla's forehead. The gesture was tender, but carried the careful quality of someone trying not to disturb fragile things. "We were just talking about the lake house," Kate said quickly, wanting to steer the conversation away from the legal documents and medical discussions that had dominated their recent interactions. "Oh, that wonderful summer," their mother said, settling into the second chair that the nurses had brought in for family visitors. "You two were inseparable that summer. I have photos somewhere of you both covered in mud from that adventure you went on looking for fairy houses in the woods." Camilla laughed, and the sound was so normal, so reminiscent of their childhood, that Kate felt tears threaten behind her eyes. "We found those little mushroom circles and decided they were evidence of magical communities. Kate even drew maps of where we thought the fairy village boundaries were. I was a very thorough fairy anthropologist," Kate said, grateful for the lightness that had entered the room with the shared memory. "I had detailed notes about fairy migration patterns and seasonal behaviors." "You had detailed notes about everything," Camilla teased. "You probably still have those notebooks somewhere, organized alphabetically and cross-referenced." Kate did indeed still have those notebooks, stored carefully in a box in her apartment closet. She had saved most of Camilla's artwork from their childhood too, unable to throw away the colorful drawings and stories her sister had created. Some part of her had always known that preserving these pieces of their shared history might become important someday, though she had never imagined circumstances like these. The afternoon passed quietly, with their mother reading aloud from a novel Camilla had been enjoying before the latest round of treatments had made concentration difficult. Kate found herself memorizing the scene. The way Camilla's hair caught the light from the window, the pattern of her mother's voice as she navigated the story's dialogue, the smell of antiseptic mixed with the flowers that well-meaning friends and co-workers had sent. As evening approached, their mother gathered her belongings reluctantly. She had been splitting her time between the hospital and her job, trying to maintain some semblance of normal life while managing the crisis that had overtaken their family. "I'll be back first thing in the morning," she promised, kissing both daughters goodbye. "Kate, you should go home tonight. Get some real sleep in your own bed." Kate nodded automatically, but both she and Camilla knew she wouldn't leave. She had been sleeping in a reclining chair for 3 nights now, unable to bear the thought of leaving her sister alone in the sterile hospital environment. After their mother left, the room seemed to shrink around them. The evening shift of nurses moved more quietly through the halls, and the hospital settled into its nighttime rhythm. Camilla had been dozing on and off throughout the day, but now she seemed more alert, more focused than she had been in days. "Kate, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice carrying a seriousness that immediately caught Kate's attention. "What is it?" Kate moved her chair closer to the bed, instinctively preparing herself for whatever revelation was coming. "I've been thinking about what Dr. Richardson said about the experimental treatment program in Chicago, the one that would require me to relocate for several months." Kate felt her heart rate increase. They had discussed this option briefly with the medical team, but Camilla had seemed resistant to the idea of leaving home for an uncertain treatment outcome. The program was promising, but still in trial phases with no guarantee of success and significant potential side effects. And Kate prompted gently when Camilla fell silent. And I think I want to do it. Camilla's words came out in a rush, as if she was afraid she might lose her courage if she spoke too slowly. I know the statistics aren't encouraging, and I know it means leaving everything familiar behind, but I think I need to try. Kate felt a mixture of relief and terror. Relief that her sister was choosing to fight, to pursue every possible avenue for recovery. Terror at the thought of Camilla facing this battle in a distant city, separated from the support system that had always surrounded her. "I'll come with you," Kate said immediately. "I can work remotely, at least for a while. You won't have to do this alone." Camilla's eyes filled with tears. "Kate, you have your own life. Your job, your apartment, your routine. I can't ask you to uproot everything for something that might not even work." "You're not asking," Kate replied firmly. "I'm telling you. Where you go, I go. That's how it's always been, and that's how it's going to stay." The conversation continued late into the night, with Camilla expressing her fears about the unknown treatment, and Kate reassuring her that they would face whatever came next together. They talked about practical arrangements, about how to tell their mother, about what to expect from the Chicago medical team. As midnight approached, Camilla finally drifted off to sleep, leaving Kate alone with her thoughts in the dimly lit room. She watched her sister's peaceful face and thought about all the times they had supported each other through life's challenges. This would be their greatest test yet, but Kate felt certain they could face it together. She pulled out her phone and began researching apartments in Chicago, medical leave policies, and everything she could find about the experimental treatment program. If Camilla was going to fight, Kate would make sure she had every possible advantage and support. It was what sisters did for each other, what love demanded in the face of uncertainty. 3 months later, Kate stood in the narrow kitchen of their temporary Chicago apartment, stirring a pot of soup that she hoped Camilla might be able to keep down. The treatment had been more grueling than either of them had anticipated, and Camilla's appetite had dwindled to almost nothing over the past few weeks. The experimental therapy was showing some promising signs according to the medical team, but the side effects were taking a visible toll on her sister's body and spirit. The apartment was a far cry from their comfortable lives back home. Kate had found it through a hospital social worker who specialized in helping out-of-town patients find affordable housing near the medical center. The furniture was minimal and generic. The walls were painted in institutional beige, and the single window in the living room looked out onto a brick wall. But Kate had tried to make it feel more like home by hanging some of Camilla's artwork and bringing photos of their family and friends. "Kate," Camilla's voice called weakly from the bedroom. "Could you come here for a minute?" Kate turned off the burner and walked quickly to the small bedroom where Camilla spent most of her days now. The bed was positioned near the window, so she could watch the changing patterns of light throughout the day, one of the few pleasures that the treatment hadn't taken away from her. Camilla was sitting up against the pillows, a sketchbook balanced on her lap. Despite everything she was going through, she had continued to draw whenever she felt strong enough to hold a pencil. The drawings had changed over the past few months, becoming more abstract, more emotional. Where her earlier work had been full of natural scenes and realistic portraits, these new pieces seemed to capture something deeper and more elusive. "I finished this today," Camilla said, holding up the sketchbook. "I wanted you to see it." Kate sat on the edge of the bed and took the book carefully. The drawing was of two figures walking along what appeared to be a path through a forest. The lines were simple, but somehow conveyed both movement and emotion. One figure was slightly ahead of the other, but they were clearly together, connected by invisible threads of companionship and shared purpose. "It's beautiful," Kate said, meaning every word. "Is this us?" Camilla nodded. "I've been thinking a lot about journeys lately. How sometimes the destination isn't as important as having someone to walk with." She paused, studying Kate's face carefully. "I've also been thinking about how unfair it is to ask someone to walk a path they didn't choose." Kate felt a familiar tightness in her chest. This was a conversation they had been dancing around for weeks, ever since Camilla had begun to realize how much Kate was sacrificing to be there with her. Kate had taken extended unpaid leave from her job, subletting her apartment back home, and essentially putting her entire life on hold. "Camilla, we've talked about this," Kate began, but her sister held up a hand to stop her. "No, Kate, we haven't really talked about it. You've reassured me, and I've let myself be reassured because it was easier than facing the truth." Camilla's voice was gentle but determined. "The truth is that you're 28 years old, and you should be building your career, maybe dating someone special, definitely not spending your days measuring out medications and driving back and forth to medical appointments." Kate set the sketchbook aside and took her sister's hands. Camilla's fingers were thinner than they used to be, and Kate could feel the small bones more prominently than before. "My career will be there when I get back. As for dating, trust me, the Chicago medical scene isn't exactly overflowing with romantic opportunities." Camilla didn't smile at the weak joke. "Kate, I got some news today that I haven't told you yet." The words hit Kate like a physical blow. In the months since they had been in Chicago, every piece of news from a medical team had been a careful balance of hope and caution. Kate had learned to read the subtle changes in Dr. Martinez's expression, the way the nurses' voices took on different tones when they delivered information about test results and treatment progress. "What kind of news?" Kate asked, though she was afraid she already knew. "The latest scans show that the treatment isn't working as well as they had hoped." Camilla's voice was steady, but Kate could see the fear in her eyes despite her composed delivery. "Dr. Martinez wants to discuss adjusting the protocol, maybe adding another medication to the mix." Kate felt the familiar surge of protective anger that had become her constant companion over the past months. She was angry at the disease that was stealing her sister's strength, angry at the medical system that offered hope and uncertainty in equal measure, angry at the unfairness of watching someone so young and vibrant fight for basic survival. "What does that mean exactly?" Kate asked, forcing her voice to remain calm. "More side effects? Different schedule?" "It means more of everything," Camilla said quietly. "More time in the hospital, more medications that make me feel terrible, more uncertainty about whether any of this is actually helping." She squeezed Kate's hands gently. "And more time away from real life for both of us." The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of traffic from the street below. Kate stared at their joined hands, thinking about all the plans they had made together over the years. Travel destinations they wanted to visit, books they planned to read, the small art gallery that Camilla had dreamed of opening someday. All of those future possibilities seemed to be hanging by increasingly fragile threads. "Kate, I need you to promise me something," Camilla said suddenly. "Anything," Kate replied automatically, though she suspected she might regret the quick agreement. "I need you to promise that you'll be honest with me about what this is costing you. Not just financially. I know you're burning through your savings. I mean emotionally, professionally, personally. All of it." Kate opened her mouth to offer another reassurance, but something in Camilla's expression stopped her. Her sister was looking at her with the same intensity she had always brought to her artwork, the focused attention that allowed her to capture subtle details that others might miss. "It's hard," Kate admitted finally. "Harder than I expected. Some days I feel like I don't know who I am any more outside of being your caregiver. I miss my job more than I thought I would, and I miss having conversations that aren't about medical schedules and side effects." She paused, surprised by her own honesty. "But I also can't imagine being anywhere else. The thought of you going through this alone is unbearable." Camilla nodded slowly. "That's what I was afraid you'd say." "What do you mean?" "I mean that you're sacrificing yourself for someone who might not survive anyway." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. "And that's not fair to either of us." Kate felt tears threatening, but she blinked them back. They had both become experts at managing their emotions over the past months, learning to cry privately and present brave faces during the difficult moments. But this conversation felt different, more final somehow. "Camilla, you can't ask me to leave." You know I won't do it. I'm not asking you to leave, Camilla said carefully. I'm asking you to think about what staying really means for both of us. I'm asking you to consider that maybe the most loving thing would be to let me face this part of my journey on my own terms. The suggestion hit Kate like a physical blow. Everything in her rebelled against the idea of abandoning her sister during the most difficult time of her life. She thought about their childhood promise to always take care of each other, about the way Camilla had supported her through her own difficult moments over the years. I can't, Kate said simply. I physically cannot leave you here alone. Camilla was quiet for a long moment, studying the drawing in the sketchbook that lay between them. What if it wasn't alone? What if Mom came to stay for a while? Or what if I found other people here, other patients and families who understand what this is like? Kate wanted to argue that it wouldn't be the same, that their mother couldn't provide the same level of care and emotional support. But as she looked at her sister's face, she realized that Camilla was asking for something more complex than simple caregiving. She was asking for the freedom to face her illness without feeling guilty about the impact it was having on Kate's life. You want me to go back home? Kate said, testing the words carefully. I want you to have a choice, Camilla corrected. Right now, you feel like you don't have any choice except to stay with me. I want you to really consider what you would choose if you felt free to make the decision based on what's best for your own life. That evening, Kate took a long walk through the neighborhood surrounding their temporary apartment. Chicago in late autumn was beautiful in a way she hadn't expected, with tree-lined streets and small parks that reminded her of home. She passed other people walking dogs, couples holding hands, families with young children. All of them seemed to be living normal lives, dealing with everyday concerns rather than life and death medical decisions. For the first time in months, Kate allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to return to her old life. She thought about her job, which she had genuinely enjoyed before everything changed. She thought about her apartment with its comfortable furniture and the coffee shop on the corner where she used to read Sunday morning newspapers. She thought about her friends, who had been understanding but distant during her absence, and about the dating possibilities she had dismissed so quickly during her conversation with Camilla. But every time she tried to picture herself back in that normal life, the image was interrupted by thoughts of Camilla facing doctor's appointments alone, eating meals in silence, dealing with bad news without someone to hold her hand. The idea was unthinkable, but Camilla's words echoed in her mind. Maybe the most loving thing would be to let me face this part of my journey on my own terms. When she returned to the apartment, she found Camilla asleep in the bedroom, the sketchbook still open beside her. Kate stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her sister's peaceful face and trying to imagine what their relationship might look like if she took a step back from the role of constant caregiver. Over the next few days, their conversation continued in fragments. Camilla would bring up practical considerations about Kate's return home, while Kate would counter with concerns about medical logistics and emotional support. Neither of them was willing to back down completely, but both were beginning to acknowledge the complexity of their situation. The turning point came during a particularly difficult medical appointment. Camilla had been experiencing increased side effect from the latest treatment adjustment, and Dr. Martinez wanted to discuss the possibility of suspending therapy temporarily to allow her body to recover. As they sat in the sterile office, listening to medical terminology that had become too familiar, Kate watched her sister's face and realized something important. Camilla was handling the difficult news with grace and maturity, asking thoughtful questions and advocating for herself in ways that Kate hadn't fully recognized before. She wasn't the helpless patient that Kate had been treating her as. She was a capable adult woman who was fighting her own battle with courage and intelligence. After the appointment, as they sat in their usual coffee shop near the medical center, Kate found herself seeing her sister differently. "You've gotten stronger," she said suddenly. Camilla looked up from her untouched latte. "What do you mean?" "I mean that when we first got here, you seemed overwhelmed by all the medical decisions and treatment protocols. But today, watching you with Dr. Martinez, I realized that you've become your own best advocate. You know your body, you understand your options, and You're making informed decisions about your care. Camilla was quiet for a moment. I had to learn, she said finally. Being sick is like learning a new language. At first, everything sounds foreign and frightening. But eventually you start to understand the vocabulary, and you realize you can participate in the conversations about your own life. Kate nodded, beginning to understand what her sister had been trying to tell her about autonomy and choice. And having me here, managing everything for you, might be preventing you from fully learning that language. It's not just that, Camilla said gently. It's also that I can see how much this is costing you. You try to hide it, but I know you're exhausted. I know you're lonely. I know you're putting your entire life on hold for something that might not have the outcome we're hoping for. They finished their coffee in thoughtful silence, both of them processing the shift that was happening in their relationship. For the first time since Camilla's diagnosis, Kate began to seriously consider the possibility that the most loving thing she could do might be to trust her sister to face this challenge with courage and independence. 2 weeks after their conversation at the coffee shop, Kate found herself standing in their temporary Chicago apartment, staring at an open suitcase on the bed. The decision to return home had not come easily, and even now, with her clothes folded neatly in preparation for the journey, she felt waves of uncertainty washing over her. Camilla sat in the chair by the window, watching her sister pack with an expression that mixed sadness with determination. Their mother had arrived 3 days earlier to begin the transition, and the apartment felt different with 3 people navigating the small space and complex emotions of this change. "You don't have to do this," Kate said for the 100th time, though her words lacked the conviction they had carried earlier in the week. "Yes, I do," Camilla replied, her voice gentle but firm. "And so do you. We've both been avoiding the question of what happens to our individual lives while we focus on my illness. That's not sustainable, and it's not fair to either of us." Margaret Williams emerged from the kitchen, carrying a cup of tea for Camilla and wearing the expression of someone trying to manage her own complex emotions while supporting her daughters. The past few days have been difficult for her as well, as she struggled to understand why Kate was leaving when Camilla needed support the most. "Are you sure about the timing?" their mother asked, settling into the second chair. Dr. Martinez said the next few weeks will be crucial for determining whether the treatment adjustments are working. Kate paused in her packing, feeling the familiar tug of responsibility and guilt. This was exactly the kind of reasoning that had kept her in Chicago longer than she had originally planned. There'd always be crucial weeks, important appointments, and moments when leaving seemed impossible. "Mom," Camilla said patiently, "there will always be crucial weeks. That's the nature of medical treatment. If Kate waits for a perfect time to leave, she'll never go." Margaret sighed, clearly struggling with the decision her daughters had reached together. "I just worry about you facing difficult news alone." "I won't be alone," Camilla pointed out. "You'll be here, and I've connected with some other patients in the support group. Plus, Kate will only be a phone call away." She looked at her sister with an expression that conveyed both love and determination. "This isn't about abandoning each other. It's about trusting that our relationship is strong enough to survive some physical distance." Kate resumed folding her clothes, thinking about the conversations they had shared over the past 2 weeks. The decision to leave had emerged gradually through long discussions about independence, sacrifice, and the different ways people could show love and support. Camilla had been adamant that Kate's presence, while comforting, was preventing both of them from growing in ways that might ultimately make them stronger. "I've been thinking about something," Kate said suddenly. "Do you remember that summer when you decided to go to art camp in Colorado? You were 15, and it was the first time you'd be away from home for more than a few days." Camilla smiled. "I remember being terrified and excited at the same time. You helped me pack, and you made me promise to write letters instead of just calling when I felt homesick." "You did write letters," their mother added. "Beautiful letters about the landscape and the other artists you met. By the end of the summer, you sounded like a completely different person. More confident, more independent." Kate nodded. "That's why I keep thinking about how sometimes the most growth happens when we're forced to navigate challenges without our usual safety nets. She looked at Camilla directly. I think you need the chance to prove to yourself that you can handle this. And I think I need to prove that I can support you from a distance without falling apart. The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Kate opened it to find Dr. Martinez, who had asked to stop by to discuss some recent test results with Camilla. His presence filled the small apartment with the familiar tension that medical visits always brought, but Kate noticed that Camilla didn't immediately look to her for support or interpretation. I wanted to share some encouraging news, Dr. Martinez said, settling into the chair that Kate offered him. The latest blood work shows some positive changes. Not dramatic improvements, but definite signs that your body is responding better to the adjusted treatment protocol. Kate felt a surge of relief, mixed with frustration. Good news was wonderful, but it also made her departure feel more complicated. Part of her had been secretly hoping for either dramatically positive or clearly negative results that would make the decision about leaving feel more straightforward. What does this mean for the treatment timeline? Camilla asked, and Kate was struck again by how competently her sister navigated these medical conversations. It means we'll continue with the current protocol for at least another month, then reassess, Dr. Martinez explained. It also means you should start thinking about longer-term logistics. Whether you'll want to continue treatment here or explore options for transitioning care back to your hometown. After Dr. Martinez left, the three women sat quietly in the apartment, each processing the implications of the positive news. Kate found herself thinking about the timing of everything, how life rarely offered clear moments of transition or resolution. This doesn't change anything, Camilla said finally, reading Kate's expression accurately. Good news doesn't mean I suddenly need less independence or that you should sacrifice your life indefinitely. Margaret looked between her daughters with the expression of someone trying to understand a decision that went against all her maternal instincts. I'm trying to support what you both want, she said carefully, but I have to admit that I don't fully understand why you're choosing to separate during such a difficult time. Kate sat down across from her mother, searching for words to explain something she was still working to understand herself. I think it's because staying together out of fear isn't the same as choosing to be together out of love. For the past few months, I've been here because I was terrified of what would happen if I left. That's not the same as being here because it was the best thing for both of us. But isn't fear natural in a situation like this? Margaret asked. Of course it is, Camilla answered. But we can't let fear make all our decisions for us. If we do that, we end up living smaller lives than we're meant to live. That evening, Kate finished packing while Camilla worked on a new drawing. The apartment felt different already, charged with the energy of impending change. Their mother had gone to bed early, exhausted by the emotional weight of the day, leaving the sisters alone to navigate their final evening together in Chicago. I have something for you, Camilla said, closing her sketchbook and reaching for a wrapped package on the bedside table. Kate opened it carefully to find a small watercolor painting of a lake house where they had spent that memorable summer as teenagers. The painting captured not just the physical details of the dock and the water, but somehow conveyed the feeling of that time in their lives when possibilities had seemed endless. I painted this from memory, Camilla explained. I wanted you to have something that reminded you of who we were before all of this started, before we became so defined by my illness. Kate felt tears threatening as she studied the delicate brushwork and the way Camilla had captured the light on the water. It's perfect. I'll hang it in my apartment as soon as I get home. I want you to promise me something, Camilla said seriously. I want you to promise that you'll try to build a life that makes you happy, not just a life that serves other people's needs. You've spent so much time taking care of everyone else that I'm not sure you remember how to take care of yourself. Kate nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure what that promise meant in practical terms. The idea of focusing on her own happiness felt foreign after months of subordinating everything to Camilla's medical needs. And I want you to promise that you'll tell me if you need me, Kate said in return. Not just for medical emergencies, but if you're feeling scared or lonely, or if you just want to talk about something other than treatment protocols. They stayed up late that night, talking about memories from their childhood, plans for the future, and the strange mixture of sadness and anticipation that came with major life transitions. As they talked, Kate realized that this conversation felt different from the many others they had shared during their time in Chicago. Instead of being focused entirely on Camilla's illness and treatment, they were talking about hopes, dreams, and the full spectrum of their lives. The morning of Kate's departure arrived gray and rainy, which seemed appropriate for the emotional weight of the day. Margaret had offered to drive Kate to the airport, giving the sisters a chance to say goodbye privately in the apartment where they had shared so many difficult and meaningful moments. "I'm proud of you," Kate said as they stood by the door, both of them struggling with the intensity of the moment. "I'm proud of you too," Camilla replied. "It takes courage to leave when everything in you wants to stay and protect the people you love." They hugged for a long time. Neither of them wanted to be the first to let go. Kate memorized the feeling of her sister's arms around her, the familiar scent of her shampoo, the way Camilla's breathing felt slightly labored from the effects of her treatment. "This isn't goodbye," Kate said as she finally stepped back. "No," Camilla agreed. "This is just a different way of being sisters." Kate picked up her suitcase and walked toward the door, then turned back for one final look at her sister. Camilla was standing by the window where she had spent so many hours over the past months. But instead of looking fragile or abandoned, she appeared strong and determined. "Kate," Camilla called softly as her sister reached for the door handle. Kate turned, her heart racing with the fear that Camilla had changed her mind, that she was about to ask her to stay after all. "Don't go," Camilla said, but her voice carried a different tone than Kate had expected. There was love in the words, but also acceptance. "I mean, don't go without knowing that leaving is also an act of love. You're giving me the gift of proving that I can handle this. That's not abandonment. It's faith." Kate felt tears streaming down her face as she opened the door. "I love you. I love you too," Camilla replied. "Now go build a beautiful life." Kate stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her, then stood for a moment listening to the sounds of the building around her. She could hear her mother's footsteps in the stairwell, coming to meet her for the drive to the airport. She could hear the distant sounds of other people beginning their days, dealing with their own challenges and transitions. As she walked down the hallway toward the elevator, Kate thought about the drawing Camilla had shown her weeks earlier, the one of two figures walking through a forest. She had understood it then, as a representation of their journey together, but now she realized it might be something different. Maybe it was a picture of two people who had walked together for a while and were now taking separate paths, both of them stronger for having shared part of the journey. The elevator doors opened, and Kate stepped inside, carrying her suitcase and Camilla's painting and a mixture of grief and hope that she was only beginning to understand. Outside, the rain was beginning to lighten, and somewhere behind her, she knew that Camilla was beginning a new chapter of her journey with courage and independence. It was not the ending Kate had imagined when this story began, but it was the ending that their love for each other had made necessary. And as the elevator carried her down toward her mother and the car and the airport and the life that waited for her at home, Kate realized that sometimes the most difficult act of love was the willingness to let go.